Good morning, everyone. It is currently 6:40 a.m. on Saturday. I had a property here that I wanted to analyze really quick, and I thought I'd take the opportunity here to show you how I do it based on the information that I got. So let's first start off with the list of questions that I normally like to get answered before I start analyzing a property. Looks like there's about 10 to 15 questions there. If you're looking at this here up top, these expenses down here are just the typical expenses that you've got for a property, just to more or less ask the seller or the seller's broker to make sure you cover all your bases. But up here, these are the questions that I'd really like to get answered. That way I can figure out um, not only what a property is worth, but also strategically what I can do with the property. Now, the property that I learned of yesterday was a retail strip center, and the only information I got was this. Tenants are on long-term leases, rents are $8,500 a month, and the tenants are on gross leases, meaning they are not triple net. What the question here is, what do you do with that? You saw earlier, I've got 15 questions that I need to get answered, plus a laundry list of expenses that I want to verify. But when you're dealing with a seller or a seller's broker who is more or less not willing to cooperate, or just, let's say if it's a broker, they're just not competent in this particular asset class in terms of investment, sale, commercial real estate, this is all you got. And the thing is, if you press too hard or you ask too many questions, sometimes you can't get everything you're looking for. And some people are just, they're unprofessional. They don't know how to deal with it. I've had people ignore me before because I've asked too many questions. So you kind of got to work with what you got, right? Based off of that information, what do you do? So here's a tool that I use. This is highly formatted. The original spreadsheet that I got that gave me this idea was from Twitter, or X, if we want to call it that now, and it was from someone who definitely knows what they're talking about. I took it, modified it, and it's what I use to analyze every property that crosses my desk. That's worth the time to analyze. Is it worth my time or not? That's to each his own. So, my preference is going to be different than yours and everyone in between. So the way I use this sheet is I just fill in the yellow. That's all I got to do is fill in all the yellow, and it's going to spit out all these calculations. And down here, ultimately, I can figure out what I want to offer for it. So I'm going to use information that I just showed you, the $8,500 a month on gross leases, and show you what the returns will look like, what it's going to be worth, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use this same type of formula, this same type of spreadsheet, and come up with your own valuation. If you want to copy this spreadsheet, just let me know. I'm happy to share. There's nothing secretive around here. I think that information is not really the key to success. It's execution. So if you're looking for information, everything you need to know is out there, but make sure you're using the tools and execute. I've got all the tools I need to build a house, but it doesn't mean that I know how to build a house. The building size square footage is 4,150 square feet. That is some research I already did prior to this video. That's why I remembered it. But make sure you know the exact rentable size square footage and not the gross size. That's very important. Sometimes with a building, let's say in this building, right? If you looked at the gross size, it's like 5,000 square feet. The building size square feet, that's the rentable, meaning that that's under roof, AC'd, ready to be rented. That balance of the 5,000, so that's like 850 or so, that is actually just the overhang where the pedestrians walk on a sidewalk. That's not rentable space. The only time where I would suggest using the gross size square footage and not the living or the heated size square footage is if you're dealing with a single tenant building. Because when there's a single tenant, they're renting the entire property, not just the small four walls that they're confined in. But in this case, we're going to use the heated square footage, which is a rentable square footage, and it's 4,150 square feet. The stabilized market triple net rate, that just means that what does the area rent for? What is the going rate of the area? This is very important. With any property, whether it's commercial or residential, whatever, if you're going to calculate a return, you must know what it can rent for. If you don't know what properties rent for, you're a fish out of water. That you just don't know what you're doing. Go back, do the homework, figure out what it rents for, because if you know it can rent for X, you would then know that you can profit Y. Without knowing the first part of it, meaning how much money you can collect, that's a deal breaker. That's a non-starter. So go back and figure out what the market can rent for. In this particular one, I know that maximum you can get about 35 bucks a foot, but to be conservative, we're going to use $30 a square foot. 35 in this particular market for this particular property. Um, I know that 35 bucks a foot is, you can get it, but it's pushing it. I know people pay it, but it's pushing it. And then just for me, I don't want to push it. I want to keep it kind of conservative. 30 bucks works. I know properties around there that are renting for 20 to 25, but those are ones without TI allowances, without free rent. So that I know that if I can throw some of that in there and entice the tenant, I can get the 30 bucks pretty easily. Estimated CAM per square feet, that's basically your expenses. What do you think your CAM's going to be per month for that property? I'm going to estimate for a property like this, probably about $6 a foot. Purchase price, this property, they're asking for $1.8 million down payment. I hope I can get away with 40% down, but we'll find out. Okay, we'll find out. The purchase price on the property, by the way, is either their asking price or what you think it might be worth. Okay, what you think it might be worth. Because you don't know what it's worth yet. You'll know by the end of this spreadsheet. But right now you think it's worth about X. In this case, it is a property that the owner is asking for $1,800,000. I'm using 40% down because right now, summer of 2023, the interest rates are pretty high. So the down payments I've been seeing is consistently about 40%. When interest rates were low, call it 3.25%, 3.5%, 4%, you can get away with 20, 25% down. But now it takes more capital to get buildings going in terms of debt coverage ratio, which again, we'll get to that towards the end. Your amortization years, that's just your loan amount. Usually when people buy a house, they get 30-year mortgages with shopping centers. Sometimes it's 25 years, 20 years, 15 years. 25 years is the average number that I see, just because you spread your payments out longer, just like if you're buying a car, right? Some guys I used to know, if they want to buy a hot car, instead of either paying it cash or getting a 3-year or 5-year loan, and their payments are much higher, they'll spread it out like 7, 8, 10 years, so they can look super cool in their cars. That the monthly payment is low, but they're paying an arm and a leg for interest. That's a bad decision. Don't ever do that. Amortization years, we're going to use 25. Interest rate right now is roughly 7%. Make sure you check with your lender what the current interest rate is, because the interest rate is going to drive your deal. You definitely want to know how much you're paying to borrow money, okay? Renovation budget. All right, so with the renovation budget per square feet, the renovation budget per square feet is just per square foot. It's just a quick and dirty way to get a nice round number. Sometimes I'll use $5. Sometimes I'll use $10 a square foot. Sometimes I'll use 15 or 20. But if you want a more accurate number, I wouldn't even just mess around with the per square. Let's say if you knew it needed a new roof, and a 4,000 square foot building, a new roof might cost $50,000. You might not even go this route. You might just use $50,000 plus another, let's call it $5 per square foot or $20,000 in order to budget yourself for renovations. So that means where we're at $50,000 and then the $5, that puts you at $70,000, right? So then here you could probably just leave it zero and then come down here to renovations and then just fill in $70,000. But again, that's if you want to get extra. For now, I'm just trying to keep this spreadsheet simple so that you can get the job done. So going back to the simplicity, I'm going to put $5 per square foot. Leasing TI per square feet. So what's going to happen here is you want to know how much TI you plan to give the tenant, roughly, whatever the market is. And TI simply stands for tenant improvements. Some people call it TI only. Some people call it TI allowance. I've heard some people call it TIA. So what we'll do is budget a leasing tenant improvement allowance per square foot. So let's go ahead and use $10, okay? We'll use $10, meaning that we're going to budget roughly $40,000 or so in order to get some money in the bank there. Now that I look at it I'm going to take a step back. $10 a square foot is what you could use. Again, me understanding this particular market, what this building is at, and how much TI is necessary. I don't think much TI is needed, so I'm going to shave that down to $5 a square foot. Keep in mind, too, whenever you're negotiating leases with tenants, when it comes to the lease with a tenant, the two things that they're always, well, the three things they're going to care about is how much they're paying for rent, and then how much free rent are they getting, and how much TI are they getting. Sometimes you can give them almost zero to none TI, but just give them extra rent, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. There's a deal I'm looking at right now that's 12 months or 12 months of free rent. But then sometimes you can keep free rent at zero, but just give them a ton of TI. That's a seesaw effect. It all depends on the deal, all depends on the landlord, the tenant, and many different factors. So figure out what works for you and for that property, and then go from there. Number of vacant months. Number of vacant months just means that how long do you think that a space or even the entire property will be vacant for before you have it stabilized, which means stabilized means that. So in this case, if you've got a small space that's going to need to get leased up and you know the market and maybe you've talked to some leasing brokers, it might take 3 months, right? So we'll just do 3 months. Percent of vacant space. If the building is 4,150 square feet, I know that about 20% of that space, called 800 square feet, 860 or so, is going to need to get released because they might leave after they figure out these new rents that are coming in from the big bad landlord. So let's call it 20%. And leasing commissions. Leasing commissions, calculate that. Calculate it so that you know what to be prepared for to pay the brokers. The brokers, they know all the tenants and the businesses in the market in order to bring to your building. So don't shortchange them. They're going to be worth the money, worth the time. Initial lease term years, let's call it 5 years. Commission rate, always pay them well, 6%. Now that you've got that figured out, you've got all the yellows here inputted. These are going to come in a bit. All this down here is factored out, okay? You already know that you are going to need cash required $846,700. That's the money that you're going to have to come up with to buy this building, assuming 40% works, okay? This number is really important because that's how you're going to calculate your cash on cash return. That's how you're going to calculate that. So you're going to want that. Total acquisition, although the asking price is 1.8, if you decide to buy, you're going to be in this 1.926. Moving on, here you are at the current income and expenses column, and we're coming in the tail end of this spreadsheet here. If you remember from the initial note that I had on the screen, the rent was $8,500 per month gross. Now, I don't know if that includes sales tax or what, and I don't even know if that's accurate or not. Chances are that's not accurate. That's not accurate. I mean, very rarely do you ever see even numbers when it comes to income and expenses on any financial statement, let alone a strip center that you're trying to buy. But let's go ahead and just use that number because that's all we got. So, it's actually $8,500 per month. So you got to do $8,500 per month times 12, puts you at 102. The vacancy rate, always have a vacancy rate. Because if you don't, that means that you've got zero cushion and there's only one way that this number is going to go. Okay. So throw in the vacancy rate. The guy over there, he told me that he's not collecting a CAM. So we already know that, well, naturally, if it's gross rents at $8,500 a month, and it's gross leases, meaning that's not triple net, there's no CAM. So that's a understood meaning. It goes without saying. Vacancy, we're using 5% here. When in a market that's very tight, very good, I'm talking like A-class real estate, A-class everything, you could use 3%. 5% is kind of an average. If you're dealing with a property in the hood, maybe 8%, okay? 10% on the high side, but 8% is good. So either 3, 5, or 8. I use 5% almost all the time. I'm talking like 95% plus. Now you've got your general revenue of $96,900 per year. Moving on down to expenses here. We don't know what the expenses are. I could dig into the tax record to figure out how much taxes are, call my insurance guy to get a quote there and estimate everything else. But then I'm just going to keep it nice and round. And I'm going to do gross income times point, let's call it 25%. Okay. That means that the expenses there are going to be roughly $25,000 per year. Now, how accurate is that number? I don't know. I really don't know, but this is just an estimate. Okay. I threw in the negative sign there because it's math. What we're going to do now is look at the net income. We're almost done. You get the net income here, $71,000 per year. Now, when it comes to this over here, we've got this already figured out. The cam, look at that. It came in right at, where is this? $6 a foot is what we're using, right? So that, again, these are estimates, right? We don't know what's accurate or not because all we got was $8,500 a month and all gross leases, right? So once we figure out the stabilized income there and rough expenses here, you now have your stabilized income information over here. And I'm going to take a moment here and start talking about this section. So this is today. This is 1 day from now. The challenging part with this deal is that we don't know if the leases I know this particular property, there's 5 tenants there. We don't know if all 5 tenants are going to be out in 1 year, or we don't know if they're all going to be out in 5 years. So we're really using our best case scenario here, and we're estimating the heck out of everything because, again, we don't have enough information. And the thing is that this owner says, hey, you know what? I'm not going to give you any information, Tony, until the property's under contract. So you're dealing with a very difficult situation when it comes to property valuation. Right away, you know that if you bought this property, you're going to be super negative, right? Your yield, I mean, there is no yield. You're literally negative. Where are you at here? You've got your income of $71,000 per year, but your debt service alone is $91,000 a year. So that doesn't work right away at 40% down. So what is it going to take to be positive? Well, if you did 50% down, still negative. 60% down, finally you're in the green, right? You're making a little less than 1% on your money. Right now, as of today, summer 2023, you can earn 5% with savings accounts. So that right there just shows you that, man, that is just a horrible, horrible deal. But hey, they're asking prices 1.8. If you had to come up with 60% down or call it 1.2 million bucks to buy this bad boy, this is the money that you're making. You're making 1% on your money annually, and nobody wants that. But let's just say, you know what, this property is nice. I want to roll the dice. How, once it's stabilized, what does it look like? Do I have value add here? What's the upside, Tony? Right? And the upside is this, if you want to call it that. Your NOI, your net income is going to be this because you are assuming you can rent it out $30 triple net plus $6 CAM. Your expenses, it's okay for all to be zero here because if it's all being passed through CAM and they're all in triple net leases, it's all good in the hood because now you don't have expenses to worry about. There's no expense liability, but you're still going to calculate it anyway because that's just what you do when it comes to evaluation. Net income 117. NOI per square foot now is $28 a foot after $28 a foot triple net after the vacancy up here, versus the 17 before. So you're up, what is that, $10 or so roughly, plus minus. Debt service stays the same because your loan didn't change, but now you've got a property that a DCR, debt coverage ratio, is almost 2, and your cash on cash is 4.67%. So a couple things. Let's talk about DCR real quick. DCR basically just means that for every $1, for example here, every $1 I pay the bank, I'm making 92 cents. Every $1 I'm paying to the bank here, I'm making 17 cents. DCR, banks normally want to see at least 1.25 to lend money, which, by the way, now that I brought it up, going back right here, the loan still can't be lent. The bank will still look at this and be like, Tony, this is a shit deal. I'm not lending you money. So guess what? Got to pump in more money, okay? Where are you at? 62, 63, 63% down to make this deal work at $1.8 million. It's clearly overpriced. So your stabilized yield is 1.19. It's just a crappy return. Going back over here, once you stabilize it, your DCR is over 2. Your cash on cash return is still 4.85. I mean, it's still a shit return. It's not anything that I could recommend, unless you truly just, if it was like a corner at the light at a super nice intersection that is just irreplaceable real estate where you want to buy and hand off to your kids later down the line, okay, that will probably work. But if you are financially driven where you're like, hey, my money needs to work for me, 4%, 4.84 is not going to work. I can make 5% plus in general savings. I'm not even talking CDs, just general savings accounts today. It's over 5%. It's easy math, guys, right? 5% versus 4.84. This is just too expensive, and this is stabilized, meaning you got to put out the renovations, the TI, the leasing commissions, dealing with brokers, touring it, and et cetera, et cetera. You got to put in so much work to try to make it work, and the juice may not be worth the squeeze. But let's say, what happens when his property is 1.5? At 1.5 million, now we're talking a whole nother thing, right? At 1.5 million, at 40% down, still doesn't work. 50% down, still doesn't work. 60% down, sure it works, but still not really that sexy, right? Again, unless you really just like the real estate for what it is, and you're just willing to go into it long term. Again, remember, we don't know how long those leases are. We really don't know. So you got to work with what you got. I still don't like this, even if there's 2 or 3 years left. I mean, I'm not going to tie up $1 million in hopes for a 5 or 6% return. I can hold on to $1 million and go buy a $3 million building and have a value add in there where in a year I could probably make it be worth, $4 million, maybe $5 million. So with this one, I just really don't want to risk it. And keep in mind too, if you want to talk about value add, let's ask ourselves, what will this property will be worth once it hits $117,000? Let's just do this. $117,000 divided by, let's say, a good general cap rate that is aggressive based on the last few years for this market is 6%. It'll be worth roughly $2 million. So you're telling me, remember earlier he was asking $1.8 million. The best case scenario for this property, what it'll be worth after you do all the work, it'll be worth 1.95. And remember down here, you're already in it like 1.95 anyway. If you buy for the 1.8 and budget all the stuff over here we talked about, rewind the video, you'll see it. If you're in it at 1.95 and it's worth on this best day 1.95, there's just no deal here. There's no dice. So I don't recommend it at all. But let's just say, you know what? Let's just make an offer anyway, Tony. Let's just figure it out. Let's see what we can do here. So, if you were to ask me how much to offer on this thing, it to me is worth closer to, let's just say I would pay 6% for it based on today's numbers. It's worth around 1.2 to me. It's worth 1.2. And let's just say if they were asking for 1.2, an actual cap rate based on current income is worth 1.2. And then up here, you saw that it could be worth 1.9 all day long without breaking a sweat, twice on Sunday, buy. That's how I would do it. So this is the type of scenario you would be looking for this type of property. Even if the seller was like, oh, my property's the shit, I want a really low cap rate of 5%, right? But then based on today's income, that means he wants 1.428 for it. But hey, on his best day, it'll be worth 1.95. I'd probably do it. I'd be, hey, you know what, Mr. Seller, I like your property. I respect you. I'll pay you top dollar. Here's your 5% cap rate. Make them all happy or whatever. Close on it. And then when you turn back around, it'll be worth 1.95 down the line. So to wrap up, I there's nothing I can do here. I mean, if I offered him a 6% cap rate, a 1.1, 1.2, and he's asking 1.8, we're not going to get anywhere, right? Especially, that property, it just hit the market. It's just not going to go anywhere. But at least now I know what it's worth. To me, it's worth about 1.2. On his best day, it'll be worth about 1.95. And he's asking right now 1.85. And it's just not a deal that I'm willing to do. So that's kind of where it's at. I mean, that right there shows you what a property is worth. I mean, your stabilized yield, cash on cash, stabilized here, down here. I mean, as of today, in today's numbers, I mean, I would like to see that in double digits, 10% plus, and that's not counting your principal reductions. You throw in the principal reductions, and you're somewhere between 12 and 15%. So at stabilized yield, cash on cash, 10% would work, but for prime properties, again, going back to if you're buying corners, if you're buying just irreplaceable real estate, it's okay to get a lower return. Call it 3 to 6%. I'd be for the right real estate, where you can walk into with little risk, meaning long-term leases, no TI, no renovations, none of that crap. I'd be okay with a lower return for irreplaceable real estate. But if you're trying to value add, trying to find a property that you can increase your net worth, increase your monthly cash flow, that sort of thing, then you have to be very mindful of what your stabilized yield is. With this property, it's a pass. I'm not even gonna try to mess around with lowballing it that much. If I had to lowball it at, let's say 1.5, let's say they asked 1.8 and I offer 1.5 and hopefully end up around 1.6, 1.7 maybe. Okay, worth diving into. But at these numbers, I mean, the down payment's insane. You know, when you start creeping to 45% up, that's just a really tough down payment to swallow. You got to have a lot of firepower, a lot of cash left to make all that work. But yeah, I hope this spreadsheet was helpful. If you want to copy the spreadsheet, if you have questions, just comment. Happy to help any way I can. And thanks for watching. Good luck.